With the new technology of hydraulic fracking, we are able to gain access to more reserves of natural gas. And as a result, because we do not know too much about these reserves and this new method, there have been a lot of environmental concerns that have been brought up, specifically water usage. Now, first, understanding what fracking is. Fracking is putting pressurized water down into the ground and using it as a method of drilling. There are two types of hydraulic fracking. There is deep horizontal well drilling, where you put the liquid into the ground at a high pressure and at one point start to horizontally drill, and that gives you more surface area. Specifically, you use this for carbonate and shale reservoirs, where you are able to break apart the shale and actually shatter it, and then the natural gas is more readily available to be pumped back up into the surface. Then there is also for vertical drilling, which is a more conventional method that you would use for conventional oil or coal beds. Now, the life cycle of hydraulic fracking fluid starts at its acquisition. So whatever location that you gain the water from. This is actually an issue because you don't want to take away water from the local community for domestic usage as well as agricultural usage. You don't want to put an extra amount of stress onto the water consumption that these locations have. Afterwards, there is chemical mixing on site, then actual well injection, and then the flowback fluid, as well as hydraulic fracking produced water. At this point, it is stored on site, and then the wastewater is treated, and usually it's recycled, because if you can imagine, you wouldn't want to try to keep trucking in this large amount of water because that costs a lot more money in terms of using those trucks. It results in more air emissions, and it's just not as convenient to just recycle the water because you know how to treat it on site. Now, with these concerns, in general, after water acquisition, obviously there's water availability that's an issue. But when you get to chemical mixing, well injection, and flowback fluid and produced water, it essentially boils down to the same concept, that there is this environmental concern because in the case of leaks, accidental spillages, or any accidental releases, the water that was used that contains all these chemicals may accidentally spill onto the surface, and by doing so it would seep into drinking water and to the groundwater. And at the end of the water's life cycle, where it is used and treated in wastewater, you have the problems also of incomplete treatment of the wastewater and solids, and any wastewater transportation accidents which may occur. So as you can see, there are a lot of trucks that are involved in bringing these chemicals and the water into remote locations. And as a result, there's a lot of chance for spilling, for accidental releases. And so companies need to be very careful that they are paying a lot of attention to how they're transferring these liquids and how they're storing them. Now, once the fluid is pumped into the wellhead, it is pumped back up with the produced water and the hydraulic fracking fluid into fluid storage, whether or not that be actual containers, as you can see over here on the left, or towards the right, the ponds. Now, an issue that may occur with these ponds is that they may not be properly lined, and as you can imagine, the fracking fluid may start to seep in if they are not properly lined. There is also the added concern of any volatile organic compounds or air emissions that may occur because of evaporation from these ponds. Fracking fluid is a protected recipe for every different company because it is intellectual property, and you don't want to necessarily release your secret recipe for maximum efficiency of fracking to your competitors. Now, on the back end of things, there's wastewater treatment. In general, you want to understand the treatment and disposal because a lot of publicly owned treatment works aren't actually able to deal with fracking fluid. So companies often have their own specialized wastewater treatment facility or method that they rely on. And after the water is treated, it can either go back into the river, aquifers, injected back into a disposal well. For the most part, what happens is once, as I mentioned before, the water is recycled, or there are a lot of cases where it is injected back into the earth.